Welcome aboard the RSS commentary on Saturday, May 8th, 2021. I'm your host, Captain Cale McCullough, and in today's top story, China has been preparing for World War III with biological weapons for 6 years, according to a report. And Hunter Biden befriends the quote-unquote chief spy of China. Let's see. RSS Commentary is an indie news organization. You can find us at rsscommentary.com. Don't forget, if you like this content, don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, head on over here in the website's under... I'm sorry. What I'm about to do, I'm about to put the feature up on the website maybe next week. So when you go to the website, rsscommentary.com, and you type in /122, that'll take you to the episode in this, for the page for this episode where you'll be able to comment on it. We've been using just GitHub, but, it's not, no. Got to go with the custom site now. YouTube has been censoring our videos, so we have hundreds of hours of videos, and they'll be up on the website if you want to join our members-only section. So heading on over to this top story here from the Daily Mail. China's been preparing for World War III for at least 6 years, UN investigators say. The dossier by People's Liberation Army scientists and health officials examined the manipulation of diseases to make weapons in a way never seen before. So there's been a lot of talk about how COVID might have originated from a lab, but there's no markers that the genes were edited. So there's something to that argument. So there's one argument says that statistically speaking, you're way more likely to have gotten the virus from human-animal contact. And this is actually true. Every single virus that in the history of mankind has gone from one animal to another at some point in time. So the chance that it was actually like a genetically modified virus actually is near zero, statistically speaking. But I don't think that this is actually the correct way to be looking at this. Oops. Sorry. So the correct way to think about this is, what's the probability chance that it was the people who worked at that Wuhan lab who went over and had contact with the animals? And the probability that it was that is actually extremely high. So you got to call BS on these people and say, oh, no, it probably came from animals. Like, okay, so, all right. So the probability chance that it passed from animals to humans is very high, but it's extremely low in that humans rarely have contacts with these animals, but there's millions of these contacts per year. And so this is why they say that statistically it's highly improbable that it came from the Wuhan lab. But this is complete BS. Because the moment these Wuhan lab workers start going into the, what do you call it? The lab, into the caves to start getting these samples, the probability chance that it ended up being the Wuhan people who are responsible for it getting from the cave to the rest of humanity, that is actually extremely high. And it's because everybody in the world, like most of the governments in the world that were like the first world governments were like funding, giving some money to these labs. Well, hold on. Wait a minute. The United States and Europe and a bunch of other countries were funding this research because they didn't want it to be in their country. Like Obama gave them money. So you can't really, hold it against the you gotta, blame China for the human rights abuses. I mean, they're blatant human rights abuses that's been going on, like the Uyghur Muslim genocide and genocide of pretty much almost any ethnic minority in China that has any sort of culture that puts God before state or their cultural tradition before state. So let's see. Let's read on in this article. It says, according to a dossier produced by the People's Liberation Army in 2015 and uncovered by the U.S. State Department, Beijing has considered... Oh, shoot. We lost the video. Sorry. All right, I think I got it. Just got to do one more thing. Oh, wow. Please don't know. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So Beijing has considered the military potential of SARS coronaviruses since 2015. The bombshell document was accessed by U.S. State Department investigators. Scientists examine manipulation of diseases in ways never seen before. Foreign Affairs Committee Tom Tung and Hat says evidence is a major concern. So what exactly were they doing? So the rumor, or what the Chinese virologist was saying, was that they were like mutating, they were mixing some HIV proteins with the SARS coronavirus, which initially sounds like, oh my God, you're like making SARS AIDS. But that's not actually how it actually works. So the way that it works is that HIV is a DNA virus and SARS is a RNA virus. So it's not really like a apples to apples comparison. It's more like a coconut to a strawberry comparison. Sure, they're both fruits, but one has a really hard shell. One of them is really soft. The DNA viruses, they can go inside and modify the DNA inside of the nucleus, whereas the RNA just hijacks the mitochondria and the cell. Isn't the mitochondria? Whatever the cell uses to replicate the DNA, something in there. It doesn't go in as far. You'll have to forgive me. I haven't looked at it in a little while. But so it's not really like that scary that they're putting these proteins in, because finding these viruses that can kill people can also give you cures to them, because there's proteins in there that you can make vaccines for, and it can, stop the disease. But it's definitely something that can be used for warfare. So the rumors about the reason why I think the Chinese government created the pandemic is, first off, if anybody remembers the scenes of in China, when they were fumigating the streets for COVID, and they put on these suits, and so there's a new virus, and we have no idea how it's spreading. They said it was quote unquote non-transmissible from human to human, and so they had these guys spraying out in the streets. You can say they're trying to protect their image, to say they're doing everything possible that they can to deal with this disease. There's another, but it also could be that they're trying to drum up fear. There's also those scenes of them welding apartment buildings shut in the pandemic. So they'd go up to, here's an image of, it's a little bit hard to see this picture. Here's an image of them welding the doors shut to an apartment complex. And, China's like mass murdered hundreds of millions of people. So how on earth are these people freaking out about COVID when there's like a death rate of 3 per 1,000 or something like that? I think it's down to 2 per 1,000 or something with the new drugs that they're using. Well, the good reason to think that they're doing this is because it would drum up a lot of fear. Sorry, doing this. Disambiguate your pronouns there. The good reason to believe that the Chinese government is used COVID as a biological weapon is, first off, it allowed their companies to transfer a mass amount of assets from our stimulus monies to China. It allowed their companies to, it bankrupted a lot of our companies, most of the small company businesses, and this allows Chinese companies to take over products on Amazon are from Chinese manufacturers. This is the biggest threat to our country, because the goal of the Chinese Nazi Party is to overthrow the world with National Socialism. They say they're quote unquote communist. So the problem with this is that there's no private property in communism. So you can't have money and corporations, and you can't have be filthy stinking rich and then be Chinese nationalist, and then there be impoverished people in China. They're supposed to be sharing equally with everybody. Instead, they have Uyghur Muslims in concentration, re-education, forced labor camp, where they're committing genocide against their ethnicity. They're deleting their ethnicity off of the face of the planet, trying to make them extinct and replace them with Han Chinese, because they're Han Chinese supremacists. And this stuff doesn't even come up on the radar. You got these black looter mobs that are burning down our streets, race rioting over fake news. Then they're rigging the justice system so you can't even get a fair trial anymore in the justice system. Dang. Camera's going down. Sorry. Just one moment. I don't know if it's the cam link or the camera. Here we go. Sorry. So, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the Chinese have been doing military operations against us. It is actually true. I'm actually saying it because I've actually been victim of the cyber war. And I've looked into how you do the Russian disinformation, what the KGB's been covering up with Hitler, how they've been using the right wing is basically like a sock puppet. So there's a long history. The USSR did everything the Nazis did. If you look at exactly what they did, they pretty much did everything that the Nazis did. They had money. They had people still traded in private with money. They had little stores in the back room, but they're like, it became like a crime state. So communism is where there's community control, and Nazism is where there's absolute state control, where they're committing genocide by wiping ethnicities off the face of the planet. USSR was committing genocide against Christians and Jews. They were actually still continuing to exterminate Jews in the USSR. Every ethnicity of people that put God before state got wiped off the face of the earth. It was indiscriminate. Okay, and then that's the thing is that about Hitler, people just think this guy's just an anti-Semite. Like, this guy's not just an anti-Semite. He is an anti-theist. He hates Christianity, but he can't attack that because there's too many Christians in Europe. So he had to attack the Jews because there's a smaller group of people. So they put out all this boogeyman propaganda from the Marxist, and during that time, Karl Marx was an anti-Semitic Jew. They were putting out all of this anti-Semitic propaganda about Jews controlling the world because it's like a disinformation campaign. What they're trying to do is they wanted to start a war. Like, Hitler invented Nazism as a propaganda technique is to start wars with, to just take over. It was like a smash and grab. Like, he engineered it using knowledge as a propagandist from World War I. And the Chinese have been, the Russians perfected these disinformation techniques so that almost everything was disinformation coming out of these people. Like, they even had the maps in Moscow were rigged. They were fake maps. And the Chinese, everything there, they control everything. Like, the internet's rigged. They got the Great Firewall. They got their own Wikipedia. And what they do is they sync up our Wikipedia with their Wikipedia. And they have, China owns a lot of media corporations. They have a lot of assets inside of media corporations, and businesses who own media corporations who do business in China are beholden to the Chinese Nazi Party. You cannot criticize the dictator Winnie the Pooh, the one that looks like Xi Jinping, because he's got such thin skin. The guy's got such thin skin, they banned Winnie the Pooh from China. I mean, for real. Banned Winnie the Pooh from China. I mean, that's got pretty thin skin. They got absolute state control. That's the thing. Why they're pulling the wool over our eyes, saying that they're communist, when in reality they have industries. They're trying to be the world's #1 superpower. They work together like a mafia, and that's the difference in between like socialism, where you have capitalism in it, and then National Socialism is like us versus them competition. It's like ethno-nationalism. It's like China versus the rest of the world. We're going to be the most powerful superpower on the planet, and we're going to utilize state control over, I'm not in on their thing. They utilize state control over industry so that the state can smash all of their political enemies. That's the entire point of fascism, is that you can utilize the state to smash your enemies. That's why people support fascism, is because they don't like those people too. So if they can utilize the state's army in order to smash those people, well, then that's exactly what they want to do. So with China, we invested all this money in their country thinking that they're going to be a democracy. And every company out there wants to take advantage of their slave labor, and they want to get the money from the Chinese economy that's opening up. And so in order to do this, you cannot criticize the dictator Winnie the Pooh, who looks like Xi Jinping. Sorry, it's a new camera. It's a. It's also. Okay, is it working now? Sorry. I do so humbly apologize about this. So definitely disconcerting when you buy a fancy camera and then it just like doesn't work on you. Dang it. Yes. Sorry about that. So, where am I at? Maybe I should wrap it up. So, they have been doing what? Let's read a little bit on into this article because I'm sorry, so sorry about the camera problems. Got the full frame, and then, but, Elgato, Camlink, and OBS, they're buggy. So, Chinese scientists have been preparing for World War III, fought with biological and genetic weapons, including coronavirus, for at least 6 years, according to document attained by U.S. investigators. Definitely questions whether or not it didn't come from the lab. The bombshell paper accessed by the U.S. State Department insists that they will be the core weapon for victory in such a conflict, even outlining the perfect conditions to release a bioweapon and documenting the impact it would have on the enemy's medical system. So let's go back to World War II. I've been studying World War II history in order to understand a little bit better about why the Antifa people have been calling people fascist. And poking around, I found a lot of stuff about communist disinformation and what they were trying to do. So the purpose of World War II was to create a socialist utopia. That's what there was a disinformation campaign in order to disassociate Nazism with socialism because they're trying to get you to like the communist. They don't want you to think that they're Nazis. So they've hidden a lot of the atrocities that they've done in the past 100 years or so, using spies. I noticed them on Wikipedia myself. In fact, I created an organization called WikiSpy in order to root these people out using artificial intelligence and crowdsourcing of what I call wiki spies. And so what they do is they rewrite our history in order to they want to change your perception from the good people, from them being the good people to them being the bad people, and the bad people being the good people. They want you to like communism. They want you to think Stalin was great, Khrushchev was great, Gorbachev was great. All these guys were these heroes of the proletariat. It's a bunch of nonsense. But the purpose of World War II was that they premeditated this war. Hitler was working with the communists, putting out the same rhetoric that Karl Marx, so Hitler is trashing Karl Marx hard in Mein Kampf, and you'd be like, this guy hates this guy, right? This guy must absolutely lividly hate Karl Marx. It's not actually true. He loved Karl Marx. Karl Marx was his idol. Karl Marx was an anti-Semitic Jew who said the same thing. Karl Marx said the exact same thing that Hitler said. Hitler was saying the exact same thing that Karl Marx said. If you know this and then you read Mein Kampf, you can actually see that it's clear as day that it's actually See, because he told the people, he couldn't exactly tell everybody lies because you had to get enough people in on the plot in order to have your cabal work. Because if there's not enough people, you can't have the cabal. You have to have enough people. So in order to do that, you have to have propaganda that your people know how the propaganda works, but then the other people are confused and they don't know how it works. And the purpose of it, it's a multi-stage operation. And I noticed it using an engineering technique called state change analysis, looking at the business model, the state change, where the purpose of your business model is to continue the business model moving forward and to minimize the amount of time that the people were extremely pissed off at you, so that you can maintain control. And you do that by blaming the other side for all of the atrocities. And this allows you to maintain the business model by pretending you're the good guys. And so once you know that this is their plan, and that the plan is that they're targeting capitalism. They're not. It wasn't like World War II wasn't to save the Jews. It was they were targeting capitalism. And so the purpose was to create a socialist utopia, whether or not it was communist or Nazi. They didn't care whether or not either of those two things were one. They just wanted you to be socialist. They wanted the capitalists to be smashed. They wanted this proletariat to smash the bourgeoisie. And so they used a multi-phase strategy where they committed a bunch of atrocities so they could take over world. They worked together. The Nazis and the communists worked together at the beginning of World War II. And if you want proof of this, because this sounds crazy to a lot of people, it's not actually crazy. It's right here in my links. It's starting to get messy. In this War History Museum, you can go read about it. In this article, how communists in Germany allied with Nazis to destroy democracy. They were working together, and they had a disinformation campaign to cover it up. It wasn't discovered till about 2001, when some historians found a order of execution that Stalin had signed at the first mass execution of World War II. They invaded Poland. Well, I guess you could say the bombing was of the leveling of Warsaw, but they hit. Stalin had ordered 3,500 of Polish's richest people to be murdered, and Hitler was using this propaganda, and he didn't think it would even work. And then he was utterly shocked that it did work, that people were actually murdering people. And Stalin turned him into a genocidal maniac. By teaching him that you can rob the rich people and then jack their money, and then you could pay off the other rich people and the intelligentsia in order to game them, to get them on your side. So so the purpose is that they're trying to destroy capitalism. So what they want to do is they want to bankrupt the world. And so that was the purpose of World War II, was to bankrupt the world. And then after that, then they just assumed that people would either choose communism or they would be in a weakened state, and then they could if they shifted the blame from the communist to the Nazis, then it allowed them to, first off, it allowed them to target dissidents in the USSR. So they could just say, you're an enemy combatant, and then they could kill you. And it turns out that these people are actually the fascist. They're definitely 100% fascist. They're not communist. There's absolutely no way in hell that these Chinese Nazis and these Russian Nazis were, or say Soviet Nazis, were communists. They were definitely absolute state control people. That's fascism. Absolutely. But the thing is, they changed the definition on you. That's the thing that you have to understand about the power players, that the puppet masters that control the world, is they don't care what you think. they all they want is for you to not question their power, for you to you don't even have to support them. They just want you to not get in the way of their power. Supporting you is great, but not being in their way is the number one objective. So So the purpose, and this is where it goes back into the China with these biological weapons that they're using. The purpose of the biological weapon that they deployed on us is to bankrupt our economy. That's what pretty much what they did. But the thing is that the Trump's tax cuts saved our behind. So people have been saying Trump is so bad for these quote unquote Trump tax cuts. Really, they're the Republican tax cuts that they've been trying to get passed for quite a long time. Wow, this is just pretty annoying, right? Dang. I'm so sorry about that. So the Trump tax cut saved our butt because they juiced up our economy. They gave us record low unemployment. And when COVID hit us, the economic boost from the tax, from allowing people to keep their own money and for the businesses to utilize the money that they generated in a more efficient way, it saved our butts when COVID hit. And the Trump tax cuts were like $1.8 trillion. And Joe Biden is trying to spend like over $10 trillion this year. Like the first estimate's like $10 trillion. And then, there's like a whole bunch of extra hidden things that they didn't cover in it that are going to make it balloon even more. And it's like it's not just like the pot is calling the kettle black. It's like the pot is screaming the N-word at as loud as it can over and over and over again, like an insane racist person. Although, honestly, let's be real. A lot of people who use the N-word aren't racist at all, and they just love that word. It actually means black in Latin. People are, and I think so. The way that word became taboo was originally it wasn't taboo. It was like it's just what you called a black person because it meant black. And then they were like, no, we don't want to be the N-word. We're gonna be we're going to use the more politically correct word Negro, which means black in Portuguese. And then I'm not sure exactly what they were thinking with that one because the Portuguese were slave traders and like there was never any Romans that ever enslaved they enslaved some Africans, but people think that like white people enslaved Africans, but this is just like insane, dude. There was like people along the coast that got boats and they went and traded with Africans, and Africans are notorious slave traders, and a lot of times they die from famine, so they had to be slaves. But the slavery was invented in Africa, and the white people only had slaves because they were trading with Africans. And it turns out, actually, most people didn't live in regions that had slaves. Like the people who had slaves were the people who had like the boats that traded with Africa, and they were the people who lived in the port areas. Most Americans are descendants of Irish or Germans, and Germany is a landlocked country, and Germany did not engage in the transatlantic slave trade. Irish people were victims of the slave trade themselves. So most Americans actually had nothing to do with slavery. Most Americans moved here immigrated to the U.S. after the Civil War, so they didn't really have anything to do with slavery. This is actually a misnomer. It's a stereotype. It's actually a racist stereotype against white people. It's anti-white racism. Let's get back to this. So the biological weapons, so what they are doing. So there's good arguments to say that they found these bat coronaviruses in caves, and then they they didn't have to genetically modify these organisms. It's possible to do things like live attenuation with a virus where you can breed them into being not as dangerous. So when you get a vaccine, you'll get 2 stages of the vaccine. So the first stage of the vaccine will make you immune from the second stage. And so the first one will give you 20, 30% immunity or something like that. And then the second one will give you almost complete immunity from it. But if you don't get the second one, it doesn't actually do what it's supposed. It does some of the stuff. There's some proteins, because the viruses have proteins. They infect the cell, and then there's these proteins that end up on the outside of the cell that the white blood cells will smell and then come and eat. So it is possible, just like you can do live attenuation, to search for viruses in nature and to put those viruses in live hosts and to cultivate these viruses to be in a more deadly or more of a biological weapon or more of a lethal doesn't necessarily have to be a lethal biological weapon. The biological weapon can tank your economy. That might be all that they need to do. I definitely believe that China did that. I'm going too long on this article. Here, let's look a little bit farther into it, because this article, I think that this is crazy. So the latest evidence from Beijing considered the military's potential of SARS coronaviruses from as early as I read that part, huh? The dossier by People's Liberation Army scientists and health officials, details of which were reported in the Australian, examined the mutation of diseases to make weapons in a way never seen before. Senior government figures say it raises major concerns over the intentions of those close to the Chinese President Xi the Poo, who looks like Xi Jinping, amid growing fears of the country's lack of regulations over its activity in laboratories. Sorry. Back here in just a second. Oh, such a good story. It's a shame to ruin it with the camera going down. Hey, if you want to make a donation to the show, you can make it at rsscommentary.com/donate, and then maybe we'll get some gear that's more reliable. We've been having gear reliable issues since the start. It's this OBS software and these cam links. Elgato cam links are really buggy. You got to get like a professional thing, and they're really expensive. So senior government... Sorry. Scrolling on down here, there's a scary-looking lab. Caption says, this evidence that Beijing considered the military potential of SARS coronaviruses from as early as 2015 also raised fresh fears over causes of COVID-19, with some officials saying they still believing the virus could have escaped from Chinese lab. I really do think that they used it as a bioweapon. There's also been a rapid decrease in sperm count in the United States, and precipitous drop of birth rate, as in like 0.3 births per woman. And if you know anything about birth rates, they got to have 2.1 kids to keep up our population, and if not, then it dips. And this can be bad, because when there's not enough young people to take care of the old people, then the old people don't have anybody to take care of them. So some people say that it's like a white supremacy issue, but the thing is it's happening to all Americans. And there's a really in it, the sperm decrease has been recent. So there was a story I was supposed to cover yesterday, and then I was actually staring at it. I was trying to find it, but we'll cover this right now. It's hard to find stuff right in front of your face. So here, this next story from The Hill. U.S. birth rates drop to record low amid pandemic fallout. The number of new babies born in the United States has dropped to its lowest point in more than 4 decades as the coronavirus pandemic and economic meltdown contributed to a years-long baby bust that has demographers worried about future growth. So if it's only, the lowest in the past 40 years, and they want to hit you with these scary headlines, but I don't know if I'm really that worried about that. I'm more worried about the precipitous drop in sperm count, because there's good reasons to believe that there's some people who are rich oligarchs who would like to decrease the world's population, and they might be putting in chemicals in the products. It might actually be the Chinese. The number of just 3.6 million babies were born across the U.S. 50 U.S. states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Northern Mariana Islands. That's a territory? In 2020, according to the provincial data released by the CDC and National Center for Health Statistics, that figure represents a 4% drop from the final figures in 2019. It's the 6th straight year that births have declined, and the lowest number of children born since 1979, when the population was just 224 million people. Now, when they say births, or I don't know what they say. Okay, so they didn't word that scientifically there. So they're supposed to say births per woman or births. If it's lowest births in 40 years, then that's really bad. Is it birth rate? Birth rate, and so that's per women. You got to make sure. It's people aren't very good with these journalists aren't very good with math. They don't know how. They never took a statistics class at all. So I'm an engineer, and I know how to do statistics. I don't do it all the time, but I can do calculus-based statistics, and it's appalling, the stuff that they get wrong. So let's look at this chart here. Let me pull up the website, actually. It's the Federal Reserve. And this chart shows you distribution of household wealth since the 1989. And so when we look at it by age, let's go. So you could see here the percentage of the wealth that was held by people under 40. Let's do the math. 2, 6, 9, and 20 point. .43. All right. So back then, under 40 in 1989. I was born in 1982. So when I was a kid, the 40 and under generation had about 13.17% of the United States wealth. So this is approximately a little bit more than 50% of the U.S. population is under 40. So today, the number is, when you do that math, it's 5.9%. So it's gone from 13.7% rounded down to 5.9% in the past, 30 years? That's pretty bad. And so when this stuff happens, it makes it really, really, really hard to have children. So you got feminism trying to convince women that they should give up having kids so that they could slave for Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, so that the nerds can have a woman to hang out with at work. And then they push them into these careers. Like, I did STEM outreach for Portland State University, so I know a lot about the statistics for the retention rates. And the retention rates for women is really low. Like, only 10% of them continue on. Almost all of them drop out. They typically find some man that with a good job, probably another engineer. A lot of them don't want to date engineers. But I mean, that's not like a total loss for them if they found a partner who has a really good job and they got a good education. That's totally not a loss. But this, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get these women to put off having kids until they're like old, fat, have health problems, and none of the guys want them. And then at that point in time, it's like, they can't get as good of a partner and they're having health problems. And then they have on average one kid when they do that. And then we got this issue where the percentage of the wealth owned by the childbearing people has shrunk dramatically. I mean, you could see it here. This is the Federal Reserve. Definitely not arguing with these statistics, right? But what China's been trying to do, I've got a point to what I'm going here, and then I'm going to move on to the next story after I fix the camera. Damn. I think it's the battery. It's like a dummy battery, and it's like messed up. So the point of what China's trying to do, like I just went over, I know it's a very long point, and most people would probably tune out. But you've got the communist disinformation plan where they're trying to blame other people for atrocities, shift blame so that they could change the perception of people so that you like communism and then you don't like the enemies of communism. And then you've got the tactic of destroying your economy so that people would become poor and then they want communism. And then we've got this shifting of the wealth from the older, or from almost all of the wealth gains in the past 30 years have gone to Gen X and older. And then you've got the chemicals that are decreasing the sperm count. You've got feminism, which is causing women to put off having kids until they're old, fat, got health problems, and the guys don't want them anymore. So they're getting lower quality guys when they do actually find a husband. So all of these things combined together definitely are very, very bad signs if we're heading into World War III, because we're not going to be competitive. Our people aren't going to be as educated. So we're going to have troubles keeping up with the military technology arms race. And so we got to get the kids, the grades up in the schools, because right now it's like people keep saying that it's the white supremacy fault that the black people aren't doing so good. But if you look at this chart of the GPAs of the different races in America, you could see here's the key here. The black people are round, and they're like here down at the bottom. So their GPAs are the worst, and it's because they live in big cities. Most minorities live in big cities where these blue bars are. Here, this is the height map of who voted for Clinton or Trump in 2016. And then you could see up over here, you can see the lower your GPA is, the higher probability chance you're going to vote for Democrats. The younger you are, the higher probability chance you're going to vote for Democrats. And the older you are, the more conservative you are. And most white people are siding with Republicans. Almost 2/3 of white men. And so then you have the Asians at the top here, and then you could see here's white people here below the Asians, and then here's the Latinos here, the 2.84. Sorry, let me, just in case anybody's listening, the Asian GPAs in 2009 were 3.26. White people's GPAs were 3.09. The Latinos' GPAs were 2.84, and the black people's GPAs were 2.69. And then if you look at the charts of the average incomes, you could see average income of a black person at that time was about $35,000 or something. The average income of a Latino was about $40,000. Average income of a white person was $5,000. Average income of an Asian was a little over $70,000. So it's definitely not a white supremacy thing going on here. It's most Democrats live in big cities. These cities are controlled by Democrats, and the people who control the top. It doesn't show here, actually. It's actually got something missing. It's missing the Asians, and it's like 98% of Asians vote for Democrats. And so basically what they're doing is they're creating this, they're trying to reduce the number of tiers in the social hierarchy. So what they're doing is they're putting the poor whites at the bottom, and then they're giving the hood Democrats, or the low-income people that live in the cities, and they're the minorities. Democrats started the KKK, and they wore hoods. And so the hood Democrats are people who live in the city, like minorities who vote for Democrats. And they are above the poor whites in the social hierarchy because they get diversity tickets. And then above them are the white feminists. So they're more of a victim because the white woman has been raped. So white feminist is a racist form of feminism where they put white women's issues above everyone else's. And so these people are pretty much in control of most of these corporations. And so the people at the top are ivory tower liberals. And so these are people who push horrible policies such as mass migration in sanctuary states, and they live in gated communities, and they only allow Latinos in to mow their lawn. And so in order to be an ivory tower liberal, you have to have a really good GPA, or you have to be a millionaire, and you have to spout off stuff about white people being bad and the oppressor class, and they oppress victims. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to divert blame because they don't want to hire the blacks in the big cities because they got crime problems, and then they got low GPAs. And the Latinos don't have as much of a crime problem, and their GPAs are a little bit better. So I worked as a minority outreach counselor for Portland State University. My boss was a Latina, and she said that we're not looking for the black kids to recruit them for the school. We were looking for the Latinos, the Asians, and the women. I didn't think anything of it at the time because we had a very diverse crew. But yeah, there wasn't any black people on the student ambassadors at that school. It definitely wasn't. There was actually only a couple of black kids. I hung out with the black kids because my grades weren't that good. So I would hang out with them because we'd all be trying to figure this stuff out. Right. So that's how I got keyed into this, to understand that the GPA thing turning into discriminate. It's like a meritocracy. I don't know what to tell you. I think the purpose of me saying this is that we're getting hit by a China cyber attack, or a non-conventional warfare. And I think I started saying this before. I'm going to finish it, and then I'm going to move on to this next article. So in World War II, they did this strategy where they shifted blame to the enemies. So they did a strategy where it's called right, left, center. So what they're trying to do, let me put you at full screen. So they're trying to, so imagine that there's some people. So we got some people here, we got some people here, we got some people here, right? And so it's a left-right spectrum. So here is that left, that's right. So here's the right people on the right. Here's the Nazis. Here's the people on the left over here. So what you want to do, you're trying, when you shift them left to right, you just kind of move people from Democrat to Republican, right? They're moving back and forth. So this would be the capitalist spectrum, though. But then you have a socialist spectrum where on the far left you got the communists, and the far right you got the Nazis. So they're trying to shift you from here to the far right or the far left. They don't want you to be here in the capitalist spectrum. They want you to be in the socialist spectrum. So what they're doing is they move back here. So it's like you move it's like you're pivoting from here to here to here to here, and you get closer. That's the purpose of what they do. Bam, 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 bam. It's a left, right, center. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring you to the socialist utopia. And this is where there's absolute state control of the pseudo-communist, pseudo-Nazis. Or pseudo-commie-Nazis, as we say. So they say they're communist, but in reality, they have absolute state control that's beyond absolute state control, where they have a shadow state controlled by the military, that there's people that are like puppet masters. They're like the KGB or the Chinese. I don't know what they call their spy people, but they're like puppet masters who control behind the scenes. So whenever the dictator is about to die, these people will like do a power grab real quick. Like they already have everything orchestrated behind the scenes, and then they'll grab power. Nobody knows exactly who's in control. It's a bunch of wealthy business people. This is why the Chinese aren't, they're national socialists. They're absolutely not communists in any way, shape, or form. Not, no, they have private property. They have businesses. They have insane amounts of wealth, and they have concentration camps and hundreds of millions of impoverished Chinese out in the countryside. So they're not a communist, not in any way, shape, or form. They're absolutely a Nazi, but they're putting out this disinformation to try to get you to think that they're communists, because they know people hate Nazis. If they hated communists and they liked Nazis, they'd say the opposite. They'd try to convince you that they were a Nazi and that they're not a communist. But the reality is that communism doesn't work. It always ends up with absolute state control, because you just can't. It's like, there was this magazine that used to put out communist disinformation called Rampart, and they put out disinformation about the play called The Deputy, which was like, they tried to frame Pope Pius XII as a Nazi sympathizer. They rewrite your history so that, like, instead of him being like a champion of it's like saving Jews and trying to stop the Holocaust, instead they turn him into a anti-Semite who facilitated the Holocaust. That's the way that they work. So that's what they did with Donald Trump with that Steele dossier, where they put in all that disinformation. So they want you to think that Donald Trump's this like Russian asset, because they're trying to make us fight each other. They're trying to change the history of Donald Trump so that it changes somebody from a good person into a bad person. They did an excellent job. I mean, you do actually have to hand it to them. They gave Trump derangement syndrome to most of the country. And, okay, so what else is there? So we went over the Asians. And so in order to actually combat this stuff, we're going to have to get the blacks a better education. There's nothing that we can do to, like, if we're going to fight a war with these Chinese Nazis, like, we need all hands on deck. We need these people to be up in the lab and up in the assembling products. We don't want these people like gangbanging up in the hood or trying to be rappers or pro athletes and then talking hella schmack about the nerds. And instead of joining the nerds, they beat up the nerds and they make fun of them. This is not cool. This is pop culture that's been doing this. And the problem that we got is that China is controlled by, or hold on, Hollywood is controlled by China. Most people aren't aware of this, but most Hollywood movies make more money in China. This allows China to censor our movies. Most of the movies are censored specifically so they can sell in China. And this allows them to do what's called cultural Marxism. It allows them to falsely frame our culture as racist, because the propaganda line from the communists, they've been putting out the same propaganda line since the USSR days, is that Americans are racist or white supremacists, they're bad people, and they have money that their family gave to them, they have bad intentions, they're trying to oppress these people, and we need to get the proletariat to come smash the bourgeoisie. It's the same classic Marxist dialectic materialist propaganda line that they've been using to mass murder people for a very long time. They just replaced the Jews with the white people. And so what is it they got? They're trying to basically destroy our economy and turn us against each other. They've been pushing for open borders. They're trying to get it so that the cartels are able to set up a parallel narco state in the southern border and in all the big cities so that they could distribute fentanyl from the Chinese Nazi Party. So they have military people backing them up. Chinese military, not our military, Chinese military that are engaging in disinformation campaigns to change public opinion in order to prevent us from enforcing our border policies so that they could smuggle in a ton of fentanyl so that they could kill our people and so that they can cause our people to become unproductive so that China can be the world's #1 superpower. Now does it make sense? I'm sorry it took so long to explain that. The camera didn't really help. But this is bad news. This is really, really bad. I'm not trying to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist. We literally are on the verge of a third world war with Chinese Nazis. They say they're communists, but that's absolutely, there's no way in hell that they are communist with absolute state control, with money and private property. That's not true. They're a form of fascism, and if they are engaging in eugenics, if they're Han supremacists, then they're Nazis. If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck, right? So let's move on to the next article here. I know that was so long. It was like an hour on that article. How long am I? An hour. But hey, you know what? World War III is going to break out. I'm going to do an hour on the article. Maybe 10 minutes trying to get the camera to work, I guess. In this next article from Breitbart, report, Hunter Biden's connected to, quote, chief spy of China, end quote, through his Chinese American secretary. A business partner of Hunter Biden called the chief spy of China, assigned to Hunter a secretary who fed him Oppo research to help China Joe Beijing Biden. The one that's tanking our economy, helping the Chinese out so that they could be the world's #1 superpower. The one that's been getting a lot of money from his crackhead son, Hunter Biden, getting spun out on cartel dope. Getting funny money from the Chinese Nazi Party and from the Ukrainians. Damn, I wish I could have partied with that dude. I'm joking. I'm not going to say what I want to say. I'm not going to. Only thing wrong with cocaine and hookers is there's not enough of it. A business partner Hunter Biden called the chief spy of China assigned the president's son a Chinese American secretary. Sorry, I'm so sorry. That was the same thing from the RSS feed. Damn it. The Daily Mail obtained the information from the emails contained in Hunter Biden's alleged laptop from hell, which has become the gift that would not stop giving. Critics of President China Joe and his troubled son, Hunter Biden. Damn. Here we go. Quote, under the heading, quote, single quote, Uncle Joe 2020, and single quote, the former assistant encouraged the president's son to tell his father to, single quote, lead by example, and single quote, bring back sensibility, and single quote, and emphasize his experience and age as strength, and double quote, newspaper added. On Friday, the Daily Mail revealed after launching his multi-million-dollar joint venture with CEFC, Hunter was assigned a 29-year-old Chinese-American assistant, Jui Kui Bao, who quickly struck up a close and intriguing relationship with her Biden boss. Probably wasn't because she wanted crack. No. If anybody here believes that she was actually trying to buddy up with Hunter Biden because she wanted crack, please drop a comment in the comment section down below, or rsscommentary.com/122. Hey, at least the stream's not going down, dude. I'm so used to OBS having problems. I'm not even stressed out right now. Damn. Apologize about the camera. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't matter how fancy your camera is. If it keeps turning off, it sucks, right? At first, emails show the New York-based Bao diligently scheduled flights, hotels, and even doctor's appointments for the president's son. Wonder if she smoked crack with him. But mysteriously, the young assistant also sent him Oppo research to help Joe Magoo Biden's 2020 election bid, urging him to take the cash from the joint ventures account as the businesses collapsed, and wrote flirty and personal messages, and even ended up with Hunter's military dog tags in her New York apartment. I wonder if they were smoking crack and having sex. The same tags can be seen wearing it in a homemade porn video he recorded on his laptop. After the joint venture had dissolved, Bao emailed Hunter with a conspiratorial message encouraging him to help his father run for president and listing talking points to combat criticism of Hunter's dealings with the Chinese. After only a year, the business venture between Hunter, his uncle, and CEFC collapsed in 2018. A joint report by Senate Homeland Security and Finance Committees issued in September 2020 examined Hunter's business dealings with the CEFC, noting the company's deep ties to the the Chinese Nazi Party. It determined that millions of dollars transferred from the firm to Hunter and his uncle raised criminal, financial, counterintelligence, and extortion concerns. Hunter's secretary, Bao, appeared very interested in having Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. In a March 2019 email to Hunter, Bao told Hunter, "You need to help Uncle Joe run for president. Your father should really run for 2020 for this country. He will be one of the best presidents in our country's history," end quote. I personally think Joe Biden has been the worst president in our history so far. Everything that this dude has been, the first thing that he did was instead of doing things to help out the Americans that got him elected. He did things to help out the non-Americans who helped get him elected. This should be the first sign that this person is a bad person. How many times is it going to go out per story? Oh, this camera is so nice. It's such a shame that it's messing up. Echoing China's foreign policy, Bao reported promoted negative stories about Trump for hunters to use, quote, including allegations of selling citizenships to corrupt Chinese officials, his alleged links to Chinese-owned Florida, quote, prostitution parlor, unquote, and letting human rights violations slide in negotiations with China. I mean, I'm not really surprised, to be 100. Not surprised at all. Bao also took issues with Trump's trade war with China, repeatedly lambasting it as a complete failure thus far, resulting in tremendous loss to Americans. I don't think so. Man, I think it was such the most foolish thing to do to give out all these stimuluses without requirements that we spend a certain portion of the stimulus on American-made goods, because it really, honestly, did us really bad because people are just not even working. Like, it's like, I read an article this morning that businesses are having hard times finding employees because nobody wants to work because the government gave them too much money. It's like not worth it. They get more money if they take the unemployment. That doesn't make a lick of sense. That's devastating for our economy. Absolutely devastating. There's no way that we can have a functioning economy when the government is paying people to stay home. Absolutely in no way, shape, or form. Now, if you do have a work gap, or you've been staying like a stay-at-home parent, or maybe something else that's blemish on your record, like criminal history or something, now is a great time to go get a job. So maybe, hopefully, let's hope the best. But I don't really see the best. I definitely see Joe Magoo Biden sabotaging our country. I do believe that he was a Chinese plant. It definitely seems like Obama also, too, might have been involved in some really suspicious stuff. So you just got to understand the business model that these people operate in. The Chinese Nazi Party, they operate together like a mafia. It's absolute state control over industry. Sorry. Might be a setting on the camera. I don't know. Maybe it's like falling asleep or something. See, damn. The Daily Mail reported that it's unclear whether Bao knew of Hunter's business partner's allegations of links to the Chinese intelligence services at that time, because she's not returned requests for comments at the story. Still, it acknowledges, after partnering with the Chinese oil giant CEFC in the multi-million-dollar deal, Bao was appointed his secretary and assistant, acting as a go-between before his Chinese business partners, translating documents and performing clerical work for Hunter in the joint venture. Hunter did not have any problem believing his new business partner at CEFC was linked to the Chinese intelligence agencies. Describing Patrick Ho to a friend in an audio recording on his laptop as the chief spy of China. That's a crony right there. In December 2020, Hunter admitted that he is currently the subject of an FBI investigation, allegedly for tax crimes. However, some news reports suggest the investigators also may be scrutinizing his dealings overseas. That whole thing with Rudy Giuliani was so sketchy. So, like, they raided Rudy Giuliani's house, trying to say that this guy's working as an unregistered agent because he had some interactions while working as Trump's attorney with some foreign diplomats, which is complete BS. You're like raiding this guy's office for communications dealings with the president and foreign parties like that. That's absolutely a political prosecution. And then they had the hard drives from Hunter's laptops just sitting there. And Rudy Giuliani's like, hey, you got to take these laptops here because they're there looking for evidence for, I can't remember what exactly they tried to get Trump on, like working with like an unregistered agent of a, like working, like he pretended like he was working for the United States when he wasn't. And that's what they raided Rudy Giuliani's office for. And then they have evidence that Hunter Biden was doing the same thing, but then they, don't take that. That's absolutely political prosecution in every way, shape, or form. The whole way through. That whole thing is just sketchy. And it's a long line of illegal stuff that they've been doing. For instance, with the FISA warrants that they used to surveil Trump Tower, with that Kleinsmith attorney. And they, like the Carter Page lawsuit against, I think it was against Kleinsmith. They falsified information to get the FISA warrant to, quote unquote, tap Trump's wires at Trump Tower. And they also did it too while Trump was in office. And there's another thing about it here. Let's wrap this article up. Let's get to it because there's other stuff and it's actually past midnight. But you know what? I'm totally cool with it, man. The current show format that I'm doing right now is I'm only doing the news for today. And if I don't get the news from yesterday, then maybe I'll cover it on the show, like sneak it in. But I'm only going to do the show news for today. So it's technically the next day, but I can keep going. I used to get 20 or 30 articles. Maybe I've even done 50 articles and took multiple days to read, just sitting here for days. But I'll continue reading here. Quote, Ho was suspected of working with Chinese intelligence services and had been monitored by federal law enforcement under Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, Daily Mail noted, citing court documents. Daily Mail added, as Hunter's joint venture with the Chinese began to crumble that month amid the arrest of its two leaders, Bo wrote that her most surprising emails encouraging him to raid the coffers of one of Hunter's and CEFC's joint corporate vehicles called Hudson West. At one point, she even offered for Hunter to not pay her for her secretary work. Wonder if he just paid her in crack cocaine. I mean, there's a very good, real probability chance that they were smoking crack cocaine together, because that dude was all about smoking crack and having sex. Like that dude was an absolute sex fiend. So what else? Let me look through the RSS feeds, see if there's any stories that I want to do right after that. Here's an opinion piece. I don't really cover opinion pieces here. It says from Newsweek, the Facebook oligarchs' betrayal of America, bar opinion, to understand the depths of the hypocrisy of and anti-Americanism of Facebook elites. It's revealing to look at who they are not removing from the platform. I would definitely agree. I've noticed the exact same thing, like who they don't remove from the platform. They don't remove people who espouse communist propaganda. They do remove people who espouse Nazi propaganda. But they don't remove Antifa. They remove the Proud Boys, and they remove the Oath Keepers and anything that's related to the quote unquote far right. But the thing is far right doesn't mean anything anymore nowadays. Like, the Wikipedia got taken over by hostile actors, mixture of Russian and Chinese intelligence and military. Some are paid by our own intelligence infrastructures. There's a coalition of Israelis who push Zionist propaganda on Wikipedia. There's like this hodgepodge. I've been studying these people, and like when you look at who's putting this stuff on Wikipedia, it just infuriates you. They're like Democrat Party operatives and like anti-fascist lunatic lefties that like have some weird job at a university, and then they spend their entire day on Wikipedia like putting facts because they don't have any friends, and they've been brainwashed by this propaganda, and then they're spouting out all this hatred towards the white people, like trying to associate white nationalism with neo-Nazism and KKK and immigration restrictions, trying to lump them all. The thing is it part of the disinformation campaign? What they do is they rewrite your history. They change the definitions of words. They change the context in which they're appropriate on, and the punishment that you will receive when you violate the norm. These are things that powerful people are able to do through control of things like dictionaries and academic textbooks, Wikipedia, social media. It's actually something that should keep you up at night. I'm actually creating an open source thing. It's pretty early stage. I have like the neural network design in my head, but I don't actually have the code out in the websites. I'm updating the website, and it's going to be part of rsscommentary.com website. It's this WikiSpy thing to spy on Wikipedia, to monitor it for tampering and bad information, history revisions, propaganda, political bias. And we do so by like creating profiles of people. We could show you just through these like pop-up cards, kind of like NewsGuard, whether or not somebody's an Antifa, BLM, communist, a National Socialist, a Israeli. Like it's gonna be, you're gonna like hover over. It'll show you like a highlight in the text, and then you can hover over it, and then it'll show you different information about the person who put that in there, and the propaganda that they've also put out, other articles that they contributed to. It's it's pretty cool actually. And the neural network that I've got still planned. I still don't have the code ready, but it's actually really, 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 really sophisticated. It's like a hyper sophisticated wiki2vec. So what am I spitting out here? So we got Facebook oligarchs. What was this? We got Hunter Biden, been smoking crack, banging hookers, and getting in bed with Chinese spies. We got, in our last article, China's been preparing for World War III to kill us with biological chemical weapons. Okay. Here, we can do this one next, and then we'll go back and do some of these other things. Yeah, there's, the rest of the stories could take a little while. swap the converter and see if that helps. Turn it on. Turning the camera on definitely helps, right? Shit. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have swapped him. I do so humbly apologize about the camera. It's been bugging us all night. Here we go. Let's hope switching the Camlink 4K helps. I do so hope it does. Let's see. So what do we got? Up next is, we don't have a lot of stories to go through. I'm used to having to go through like 20 stories. In this next article from Fox News, Trump DOJ secretly seized phone records from Washington Post reporters. The Trump administration's Justice Department secretly obtained phone records from 3 Washington Post reporters who published stories detailing discussions between Russia and members of former President Trump's 2016 campaign, according to a report Friday. The records include the caller and recipient of each. The records include the caller and recipient of each call, but it does not include the contents of the call or what was said. Sorry, it also includes the duration. The letters did not say why the records were seized, but during the 3.5-month period, the 3 Washington Post reporters had published a story on intelligence intercepts indicating that former Attorney General Jeff Sessions had discussed details pertaining to President Trump's presidential campaign with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Here's a tweet from the Washington Post. Trump admin Justice Department secretly obtained WAPO's phone number. So here's the story that they tweeted out on May 7th, a couple of days ago. Quote, "We are deeply troubled that this use of government power to seek access to the communications of our journalist," and quote, Washington Post executive editor Carmen Barr said in a statement, quote, "The Department of Justice should immediately make clear its reason for the intrusion into activities of reporters doing their jobs and activity protected under the First Amendment," end quote. It's definitely his job to find who's leaking. Have you got like people leaking internal secrets from the White House? You don't know like if that's the Russians doing that. Like you don't know if the White House is bugged. Dude's got a good reason to know who they're talking to. I could see how they wouldn't give you the contents of the messages, but it does seem like they should be able to at least get the numbers of who they called and the durations. It seems like a reasonable request to me. During his presidency, the king of memes, Donald Trump, aka the Great White Savior, regularly criticized media outlets that published stories regarding the federal investigation into whether members of his campaign colluded with Russian officials ahead of the 2016 election. Former the king of memes, also called for a crackdown on leaks originating from federal institutions. Definitely got a big problem if you got people leaking stuff to try to destroy your presidency to the Washington Post. What people don't understand is that the CIA and KGB have been having plants in media outlets since the dawn of spies. It really has been pervasive, and the CIA has, and other, I guess you have to call them the intelligence community. They have to put these spies in there to counter the disinformation, because like people, when you get hit by a disinformation campaign, you're like, you have no idea that what these lies are intended to do. They seem completely innocuous. You know, they're like, oh, the Steele dossier, like Donald Trump was banging hookers in Russia after the Miss America pageant, and he's a Russian asset. He was like, now they've got compromat on him. They got dirt on the president, and this means that he's a threat to you. He's a boogeyman. You have to be afraid of the boogeyman. This is the problem, is like, you don't understand at all what the lies are there for. They're like, it's a lie and it made you very mad. And that's all that you saw, was that it was like, oh yeah, that's bad, that's horrible, this guy has to be a horrible person. But then you start to look into the reality of it, and then it's like, oh, well, yeah, they've been painting people, they've been doing history revision to paint people as bad people who were good people, and to paint the good people as the bad people for a long time. This is absolutely nothing new at all. And we would be fools to think that it wouldn't happen again, that the stuff would just go away. Like, these people have figured out how to get absolute state control. Like, they know how to... From what the KGB says is that it only takes 15 years to brainwash a country to kill their own parents. That's how much power they have, and it's because they are able to coordinate lies through secret networks, through cabals, like spy networks, and groups of wealthy like industry barons and secret power players that they can contact. They have enough money to where they can pay people off to get the results that they want. And this allows them to game the system to work together like a mafia behind the scenes. That's what China's been doing. It's what Russia's been doing for a long time. But this, I definitely think that Trump was probably in the right for doing that. I don't think that this was bad. But of course, all the lefties are like, up in arms. And when did they find this out? It looked like the tweet from the Washington Post of the original article was like 2 days ago. So this is a relatively new article, or a relatively recent article, and it definitely seems like, the left is going to be attacking Trump for this. But that's the problem with a lot of these attacks. Like, they've been with Trump, is they've been attacking him for things that, like they had a knee-jerk reaction for, and they're like, he's a bad person. For instance, like, build the wall. You're like, oh, he's trying to build a race wall to try to keep out the Latinos. And then, but the reality is that not all Latinos support illegal immigration. In fact, most of them don't support illegal immigration. And this is a perfect segue into the next article here about immigration here. In this next article from Breitbart, Joe Magoo Biden imports replacement migrants as current migrants go homeless. President Joe Magoo Biden, President Joe Magoo Biden's progressive deputies are spending $3 billion to help many poor migrants into the United States. even as other pro-migrant groups complain that current illegal migrants are going homeless in those high-rent cities. This is the problem. You see, it's like these liberals think that like you just let all these illegal immigrants in, and they just like magically integrate into the society, and if they don't, it's because you're racist. You know, the white people are bad, they have bad intentions, that they're like xenophobic, and they don't want to, they don't think Latinas are hot or something. You know, they're like, bro, you're crazy. Latinas are smoking hot. You know, like white dudes got dicks. Like they want to do interracial threesomes too, right? But the problem is that they congregate in the big cities, and when they do this, they depress the wages. They all have to compete for wages. The rent's already crazy high, and then they congregate in. They just pack more and more people into houses, and then it deprives Latinos of the ability to share the American dream. So it's actually a far right thing to do to allow illegal immigration, because it creates a steep social hierarchy that causes wealth to accumulate in one group of people's hands, like the white people, and then the people down at the bottom who are in the big cities are they don't have the money to like move out, and then they don't have it's like they're a frog in boiling in water, where the water is just turning up slowly and slowly and slowly until next thing you know, they're boiling, and we're boiling right now. The thing is like we got 331 million people. You know, we can't just continue to pack it in. Like immigration worked out wonderfully great for a long time, while our country wasn't so packed. In fact, it's been a great thing for our country. We've had a lot of good things from people who were, you know, viewed as conquerors historically. They've gotten like a bad name. Like for instance, the colonialists. People dog on colonialism as if it's like the worst thing to ever happen to the world, but the reality is that everywhere where the colonialists went, those countries are the rich countries, and then everywhere where the colonialists didn't go, those countries are all poor right now. They have authoritarian dictators. They have a lot of crime, corruption, a lot of murder. They're assholes, and it's not because they don't have resources and because they're not good countries. It's because of the corruption, and it's because they didn't get English common law. If you study English common law, you'll get more respect for our legal system. People like to hate on it, but the reality is there's no real easy, good way to deal with it. It's like everybody in the child custody battle wants to win. Everybody wants to have full custody of the kid, and for their ex to not get anything that they wanted and them to get everything that they wanted. It's just the way that people are. And it's like the courts are faced with this extreme challenge of trying to weight people's rights at different, give them different weights to try to make it as fair as possible. And a lot of times it's just not easy to make everybody happy, because you're like, oh, but you're being a bad person by kicking out these illegal immigrants. But the problem is like there's a line. People are trying to immigrate in here, and they got families too. And the legal immigrants view the illegal immigrants as line cutters. You know, it's not like a racist thing. They're not trying to be like xenophobic, but like they want to immigrate their family up there, and they can't do that when 56% of all these illegal immigrants are coming from Mexico. They're like 1 in 20 Mexicans is in the United States illegally. And they start packing into these big cities, and then they get dependent on government handouts. And the Democrats are more than happy to give these people handouts. They'll give you handouts all day. If you vote for them and you continue to ensure that they have one-party rule in their state, they're going to continue to utilize the strategy of utilizing the new voters from the illegal immigrants like from their children. So you can't get the illegal immigrants to vote, but you can get their children to vote for you if you're the party that's trying to prevent the illegal immigrants from getting kicked out. And this allows, like most Democrats live in big cities. I think we just went through this. Can't go through this too much, but we got a height map of the voters who voted for Trump and Clinton in 2016. Blue bars are the Democrats, red are the Republicans. And you can see that most Democrats live in big cities and that most Republicans live in small to medium-sized cities. So, and then all around the border here, down here, are where the people who have to deal with all this mass illegal immigration. Well, I've never had the camera go down so much. I did a live stream last night, and like it really actually did not go down. Oh, it was there for a second, and then it just like ditched. Apologize about the camera. This has been pretty pervasive tonight. Okay, so we got the height map. This is where the Democrats are living. There's the Republicans. And then we've got an article, and it was about this. So the immigrants are pouring into the big cities. They're depressing the wages. It's causing them to be a permanent underclass. And the Democrats don't care because they just want the children of the illegal immigrants to vote for Democrats. It's like a long-term strategy. What they've been banking on is their entire strategy revolves around rapid demographic change. So we could see in this article, or this image is from the, this is from the Census Bureau, right? And this shows you a chart of the population of the United States since like 1900. It was like 76.2 million people in 1900, and then in 2060, if it maintains its current trajectory, it'll be 446.9 million people. That's a lot of people. If we have low immigration, it'll be 376 million people. The projected immigration will put us at 404.5 million. And if we have no immigration, it puts us at 319.7 million, which would be good because there's global warming. But we have issues with if we don't have enough people to take care of the old people, then it can like hurt our economy too. But most of the people who are like our birth rate, the native born people has been going down. We just covered an article a moment ago about that. And then that wasn't the one that I wanted though. And so most of the people that are coming in from Latin America. Here's a chart of the different languages that they speak. And so it used to be mostly Europeans migrating here. And then their birth rates have tanked. So there's hardly any of them coming. And then most of them are from Latin America and Mexico. So the reason why is because it's a land bridge. So people are like, oh, the white people are trying to be racist by kicking out or by enforcing their immigration laws. But then if you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, aren't we like at like 10% of the world's population? So like 10% of the world's population gets 50% of the immigration here. That's actually racist in favor of Latinos. It's actually Latino supremacy. It's not actually white people being racist. It's actually Latinos being racist. And so since our population is it's declining. So I was born in 1982, right about here. And then you go over here, and then you could see this is the projected amount of people that they're trying to stack on top of here. And this wouldn't be bad if our people were growing, because I think Latinas are hot. You know, give me a Latina girlfriend. But the problem is, this is the problem, is I'm not going to get a Latina girlfriend because these people live in different areas. They congregate in areas and they don't assimilate into our culture. And then next thing you know, everybody's speaking Spanish. Like 27% of Mexico, 27% of California was born in Mexico. Or sorry, not in Mexico. Only 10% was born in Mexico. 27% was born in another country. And so that's jacking up the rent really high in California, because they've got a massive amount of people there, and it displaces people, and then they move from California up into Oregon, and we got these problems with transients banging cartel dope because they're funneling in massive amounts of cartel dope. They're using these illegal immigrants, so they pay the cartels up to $10,000 to smuggle them in, depending on what they got to do, where they got to go. Typically, the immigrants will only have like $1,000. So what they'll do is they'll have them sell narcotics at safe houses where they drop off dope, and they have them sit there for a while and then distribute the dope after a little while. Or they will have them work for sex work, as that they'll sex traffic them. Or they will murder their family if they don't pay, or they can use them for slave operations, for like working in sweatshops. They don't pay them anywhere near the wages that we get paid. You know, they're getting paid like $3 an hour or something, maybe $5. And it depends on how many of the illegal immigrants. When you got a lot of illegal immigrants, I mean, they start dropping the wage down as fast as they can. So sad. So sad. I almost used another camera tonight, too. Now let's read it on in the article. I'm fighting with the camera. Here it says, President Joe Magoo Biden's progressive deputies are spending $3 billion to help many poor immigrants get to the U.S. cities, even as other pro-migration groups complain the current illegal immigrants are going homeless in high-rent cities. I think that was the same thing. I wasn't supposed to read that. No. I think it's actually the power on the camera. I don't know what's going on. I do so humbly apologize. The New York Post reported May 7th on the commercial contacts which help U.S. officials provide the migrants with aid and legal resources so they could stay in the United States. The federal government has awarded about $3 billion in contracts to shelter unaccompanied illegal immigrant children since February. Records show Department of Health and Human Services awarded the three largest federal contracts worth over $2 billion to two private companies and one nonprofit. Wow, that's a lot of money to award contracts. A record illegal immigration surges began overwhelming authorities at the southern border, all triggered by Joe Magoo Biden's promise to give immigrations a deportation freeze so that Latinos will vote blue no matter who. And then what happens whenever they actually get it? Now there's so many illegal immigrants. Now your rent's getting jacked up. See, the illegal, immigration benefits Americans when you get cheap labor from these people. It's like we paid into the system through our taxes our entire life. And then you bring in somebody from outside of the country, and then they didn't pay these taxes their entire life. So you've paid quite a bit more in your tax in your life than this person has. They just get to utilize stuff. But we get benefits because these people, they bring in a lot of expertise. They provide us with cheap labor, and then we get something good in return. But this is too much immigration, and then we don't get anything in return. We get money taken from us because the rent gets jacked up, and we had to deal with all these narcotics flooding the street from the cartels that are killing our kids with fentanyl that's coming in from China, from the Chinese Nazi Party, using it as chemical warfare agents to try to take America off the top spot as the world's #1 superpower. Like, this is some sketchy stuff. And when, like, China's trying to be the #1 superpower, and so in order to fight us, it really helps China when we can just allow mass migration to just delete our culture. If they don't even have to fight us anymore because they just did some cyber war activity to make it taboo to criticize illegal immigration, then it's like it works out really good in China's favor that the cartels are bringing in all this dope they're getting from China, and that the people who are the #1 enemies of the Chinese Communist Party, they're getting replaced by a bunch of poor people that are rooting for socialism, looking for that government handout. And then next thing you know, while we're distracted dealing with all of these issues from the woke cancel culture, then the Chinese Nazis slip in, put all this propaganda in, and then either ignite a war here or seize power. For instance, the Democrats are trying to push for nationwide mail-in voting with no voter ID requirement, same-day voter registration, and legalized ballot harvesting, which is ballot harvesting is where you pay private individuals to go around and pick up ballots. And there's a big problem with this is that, and they did this pervasively in the 2020 election. Like Mark Zuckerberg paid about $500 million in order to put these ballot boxes and fund the mail-in ballots in 2020. They put these ballot drop boxes. They were called Zucker boxes. They put them every 4 square miles in Democrat areas, and then in Republican areas, they put them every 11,000 square miles. It doesn't take an idiot to realize, okay, well, obviously the private parties engaging in picking up ballots is extremely biased towards Democrats because, like we looked at that image earlier, the height map from the 2016 election of who voted for Trump and Hillary Clinton. And then you got the blue bars are the Democrats, and then the red ones are the Republicans. And you can see that obviously the density of Democrat voters is significantly higher in these big cities. It's quite apparent. So if you're going to rig the election, all you got to do is pay ballot harvesters. You just pay a little bit more on the side that you want to win to target voters to go to their houses. And you can do some sophisticated propaganda techniques with these people. So you can send people to their house to conduct surveys on things or call them with targeted phone surveys to where you're asking them questions to get them upset, to push a propaganda line. then you can put out media ads, targeted media ads on social media, and then you can then hit them with ballot harvesters. And so the ballot harvester, when they get there, they can ask them politically charged messages like anti-white or critical race theory. They can if they haven't filled out their ballot, they can go to the door, knock, knock, knock. I used to canvass for the Democrats, so I know a lot about canvassing for political parties. You can go to the door, and if they haven't filled out their ballot, you can feed them a propaganda line. And then after then, they can come back and then knock on your door again and pick up the ballot. Right? Sounds innocuous at first, right? It's like what they're able to do through the all the data that they've gathered, like with big data through Facebook, social media, targeted ads. They are able to target specific people, and they're able to influence your vote. They're able to control the information that you get on social media. For instance, there was that Time magazine article, the secret cabal. What was it? The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the quote unquote saved the 2020 election. And this article in Time, it was in the news a lot several months ago, goes through states that there was a cabal of rich people and a black looter mob who conspired together in order to rig all of the information points, or they called it the information choke points, in order to, quote unquote, fortify Biden and suppress Trump. And they didn't tell you that this was going on. Nobody was aware. They're putting out they're doing all this ballot harvesting. They got these ballot drop boxes. There's no videos watching the ballot drop boxes. And they can use an app, and this app can scan the outside of the ballot, and it can tell you what party the person is. It allows them to throw the ballot out. And so the Democrats are trying to make this legal. The Constitution says only state legislatures are supposed to be the ones who run the election. And our Constitution's based so that any powers that are not expressly given to the federal government are given to the state governments. It says in the Constitution specifically, it's the state government's responsibility in order to deal with the elections. It doesn't say anything about how to run an election in the Constitution at all. Not at all. And they're trying to push this stuff to do legalized nationwide voting, no voter ID, same-day voter registration. And that is the most likely way that you're going to get voter fraud, is through same-day registration with lack of no verifications on the signature, with mail-in ballots, same-day registration, and then it allows people to bring in false ballots. It's not something that we should allow or tolerate at all. And it was the first thing that the Democrats did. These people absolutely premeditated. What they did with this, it was very clever. There was disinformation that they put out with Sidney Powell, all those crackpot QAnon people. And the information was designed to disguise this ballot harvesting fraud. So the ballot harvesting fraud is the real fraud. But what they did was they put in all this disinformation in order to discredit everyone with all the fake voter fraud stuff. Pretty annoying, huh? It's been going on all night, man. Not really much I can do. I think it keeps turning off. I have no idea why. It might be overheating or something. I don't know. It might just be constantly overheating. It is pretty hot here. I'm going to turn on the AC. I'm so sorry. So let's see what's going on. We're talking about China Joe Biden and his they're packing in all these immigrants into the big cities. They're shipping in a whole boat ton of heroin, meth, fentanyl, so that they can get rich as piss selling deadly drugs to our people, so our people can suffer so that other people can gain. I really just, it's people keep saying it's like this like white nationalists trying to like oppress the Latinos by like preventing the illegal immigrants from having free access to our country. And it's like people just don't even think about all the bad stuff that happens with the cartel. The cartel have been mass murdering migrants down there on the southern border. The Chinese Nazi Party are smuggling in spies, $50,000 a head to the cartel. The Chinese are shipping in massive amounts of fentanyl, getting distributed by the illegal immigrants that are getting human trafficked by these cartels that mass murder people. It's like everything about this is just bad. Let's see. We got to get through these articles, especially this camera is being a hassle. Let's see. We got through the Hunter Biden thing. Got through that immigration one. There's a few other. Let's go into the Cernovich article. In this next article from Breitbart, exclusive Mike Cernovich, quote, I've definitely been considering, end quote, running for California governor to push the issues. Mike Cernovich, author, journalist, and producer of Hoaxed, said he was considering running for governor of California. That would be actually very interesting. Mike Cernovich is demonized as a white nationalist because he thinks the same things that I do about illegal immigrant. Everybody at Breitbart thinks the same thing. It's like the liberals they bought this line that the reason why California is a sanctuary state is because they're trying to be nice to the illegal immigrants. But this just isn't true. The reason why California is a sanctuary state is so that they could boost their population so that the children of the illegal immigrants will vote for the Democrats. That's why they're doing it. If the children of the illegal immigrants voted for Republicans, the Republicans would probably like them. Maybe not. Well, they do like them, but they would like them more. But most of them are voting for Democrats. So this creates a situation where the party is rigging politics in their favor with the immigration policies. Which it's just highly immoral to do that because it depresses the wages of the Latinos. These people pushing these policies, these ivory tower liberals, they live up top, they ivory tower. They get paid buku bucks in their job as a white feminist, and they push these politics because they want people to like them. They want to go out to the club and then have their gay friend and their Latino friend and their black gay friend and then their Rasta friend. They want to just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I've sang Kumbaya with these people a lot of times, and like it's usually a pretty good time and nothing goes wrong. But the problem is you turn your head, look at the left side, and then you're going to get pickpocketed, and then you turn over to the right side, and then somebody starts circle jerking you. It's just the way it goes. They're circle jerkers. They all rub their own egos, dude. They're all froofing each other's ego froze. They're trying to get these victim oppression points by proving that they're the most victim and that they treat victims the best, that that they're not a rapist, that they're not a misogynist, that they treat women better than everyone else. And me, as someone who studied psychology, I see it. I see it right away. Because I've studied enough psychology to where I know how the reward mechanisms work. And I've studied enough artificial intelligence to know how reward mechanisms work. And really what they're doing is they're having a self-optimized reward mechanism reinforcing their behaviors. It's self-optimizing. You get rewards for spouting anti-white racist, woke, critical race theory stuff, for your feminist messages, talking about how oppressed the white women are, how they've been raped, and how everybody should feel bad for them, and then give them everything they want before everybody else gets helped out. And what they've done is they've bought the line. So the line is set up in such a way to maintain the power dynamic in politics. So they've got it, the rich people are apolitical. They don't care who's in office. They just want the policies that they want enacted. And they'll fund people on both sides, which in a way isn't really like a bad thing, because it's like, if you don't like Republicans, why don't you support Republicans that you don't dislike? Right? That's personally why I joined the Republicans, is so that I can make them more environmentally friendly. But at that point in time, I also thought that global warming was a bad thing. But I'm reasonably sure that the book Inconvenient Facts kind of dispels this whole notion, because what we've been comparing the temperature increase to was the Little Ice Age. And during that period of time, like, the temperatures were freezing and people were dying of starvation because it was way too cold. So if it's in between the Little Ice Age and it being the temperature it is right now, maybe a little bit warmer, I'm going to go for the temperature right now, just a little bit warmer, because it is intuitively obvious to the most casual observer who smokes marijuana that plants like CO2. Why? Because you see these buds just get huge, dude. Like gigantic buds. They're like frosty from the CO2. Right. So I'm going to question this whole thing about the global warming, because the people pushing this, they all got deep investments in these green tech companies, and they got deep investment in companies in China that are manufacturing solar panels, and they oftentimes do not have investments in companies like Tesla that are making the solar panels here. Well, not Tesla, Solar City, which is owned by Musk. Let's read on the article. A poll of registered voters in California published last week had 3% of respondents selecting Cernovich as the most likely person they would support to replace Governor Gavin Newsom in the event of gubernatorial recall. Republican candidate Caitlyn Jenner received 5%. I'm tired of Hollywood in politics. I'm tired of it. They have unfair name recognition from their job. There's no other groups of people that can have that. Ronald Reagan was awesome, right? Maybe I shouldn't dog on him too much. Maybe we should just make Hollywood more conservative. Hollywood is a cesspool of liberal crap. It really is. Hollywood is one of the worst places. It's like extremely sexist. You want to know how you get a job in Hollywood? You got to have the right skin color. You got to have the right ethnicity. You got to be the right height. You got to be the right body weight. You got to know the right people. And you have to have the right political ideology. This is the problem with Hollywood, and they make most of their money selling their movies in China. So that when they're trying to push some moral BS on you, you got to realize that these people, the movie stars that are popular today that rise up are only doing so because they're allowed to sell their movies in Hollywood. In China. Hollywood is making 3 times as much money off the videos in China. So they don't care about the U.S. market. And this gives the Chinese Nazi Party the ability to commit cultural Marxism in the United States through labeling white people as racist, saying that white culture is racist, that it is bad because there are these greedy white people, these white capitalists, they got money from their family that was given to them and they don't deserve this money. So the bourgeoisie needs to come and smash, the proletariat needs to come and smash the bourgeoisie, like that classic communist propaganda line. Oh, that was a little bit of a tangent there. Quote, you're a viable gubernatorial candidate out in California, which is super cool. And quote, Marlowe stated, quote, you're polling at 3% despite the fact that you're not in the race. Do you have any reaction to that? Question mark, end quote. Cernovich replied, quote, I thought it was like a prank or something at first. So I looked and it was a legitimate poll. And I thought that it had been pretty revealing of the time. People want a little bit of excitement today. They didn't put the end of the quote there, but I'm going to put it in there for them right there. End quote. Marlowe inquired, quote, do you think it's a possibility? Are you considering it? Question mark. And quote, Cernovich replied, quote, well, I've definitely been considering it. If anything, for no reason other than to push the issues, ... There's still this mass denial that open square bracket politicians and square bracket seem to have, where they don't know what the people want. People whose job it is in the GOP to win elections, to run people, to run messaging, they still don't get it. They're really in denial about what's exciting, what people are hyped up for, and what gets people to vote. End quote. Quote, they want to run this boring stuff all over again. And quote, he added, quote, it doesn't work. People don't want it. People want excitement. People want someday to stand up against the establishment, the real establishment. So we'll see, end quote. You know, honestly, I think most Americans would rather see Hunter Biden smoking crack in the White House than Joe Biden in the White House naked. I mean, for real. I want you to close your eyes. Okay, now I want you to imagine you're at the White House. You're at an event. There was a bunch of pretty ladies there in dresses, and people are starting to leave. And then out comes Joe Magoo Biden walking around naked at the White House. Okay. All right, now I want you to think about Hunter Biden smoking crack in the White House, banging hookers. And you just walked in. So you just saw Joe Biden streaking around the White House. Maybe he even groped a woman. And then you walk into the White House and then you see Hunter Biden smoking crack and banging hookers. All right, which one of those two things would you rather unsee? You know, it's clear. It's obviously clear that people would much rather unsee Joe Biden streaking around the White House groping women. And when I say this, I'm not joking about this. Like, I wish I was just like making this up just to try to be funny. I'm actually like reporting on the news here. Joe Biden literally is streaked around the White House naked regularly, and he would grope women in the White House. Like, there was this one Secret Service officer that they had to pull off of Joe Biden because Joe Biden groped his girlfriend at a White House event, and he was gonna beat him up. So the Secret Service agents pulled him back. You know, that's who we got in the White House right now. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't really think that that's that weird to walk around naked in your house. Honestly, I think that's kind of normal. But in the White House and like groping women, I mean, that's another level, dude. I've never groped a woman ever. Well, without, her consent, of course, because, groping actually consensual too. But yeah, that's just freaky. It's freaky to think that in the entire time that Obama was in the White House, that there was some weird, creepy old dude that was like walking around naked, groping women, and his son was like smoking crack and banging hookers. Like, wow. The image is burned into the back of my eyeballs. I can't even unsee it, dude. Oh. I humbly apologize that I just put an image of Joe Biden naked walking around the White House groping women. I understand that this was a traumatic event for you. Maybe you should hit the like button and subscribe down below. So Sir Marlowe inquired, do you think it's a possibility? Are you considering it? And quote, Cernovich said, well, quote, well, I've definitely been considering it, if anything, for no under... Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I already read this. I'm so sorry. That's it for this article. And then what's going on? What else do we got? In this next article from Fox News, Montana Governor Gianforte signs bill banning transgender athletes from girls' sports. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte. Hold on, Gianforte. That is a really difficult name to pronounce. Gianforte approved legislation Friday barring transgender youth from... I'm sorry, they just said the title. There. It's annoying when they slop out. It's annoying when they slop out the RSS feeds. Backed the Republican state lawmakers. The bill required athletic teams at public schools to limit participation based on biological sex. That means also to contain explicit language depicting that girls or women's sport teams, quote, may not be open to students of the male sex, end quote. So you got to look at this in the situation of like, okay, well, why do we have these women's sports teams even in the first place? Like what sports are they playing? Are they like volleyball, softball, pole dancing, chugging beers? Maybe we should make drunken mud wrestling our national pastime. I think that actually would probably be a good idea. What does that have to do with this? Well, the purpose of us having monosex things is not really necessarily to protect transgender people. It's that like women on average, they're like not as strong as males. They're also not as strong as transgender quote unquote women. And So it's like, where do they go? Where are they supposed to play? Are they supposed to play with the women or the men? If they play with the women, then they're going to dominate the women because they're going to be on average stronger. So then what's the point of having women's teams? Like it's pretty much just like the trans supremacist team. It's like this trans person can't compete with the men, so they're going to go dominate the women because it's easier. They can like punch down. That's the problem with it. Is it's like it violates the punch up only principle. Is the reason why you're not supposed to hit a woman is because you're punching down. Not necessarily that there's anything immoral about punching a woman. It's that men are big and they can hurt women. You know, that's the reason why it's like we're not abusive. We don't like beat up our wives, because that would just be a totally POS thing to do, right? So it definitely makes sense to stick the trans quote unquote women with the men. I mean, if you wanted to stick them somewhere, it's like they have to like, maybe you could like look at their body size. And I mean, that would be the only fair way to go about doing it, and be like, okay, well, you're approximately the same body size and weight as the rest of the women. So, all right, sure. Sounds good to me. It seems to be the only fair way to go about dealing with it. It doesn't really seem like, allowing people with mental disorders, and yes, it is a mental disorder. It's out of the ordinary. It's not in order. It's out of order. There's nothing wrong with being out of order. Disorder. What is another example of a disorder? Another example of a disorder is, I don't think they consider homosexuality a disorder, because the percentage of population that's homosexuals is large enough that it's considered common. But trans is not considered common. Gender dysphoria is definitely a mental disorder. People think that trans and gender dysphoria are like the same thing. It's not actually true. There's like trans people that have gender dysphoria, and there's trans people that don't. For instance, a trans person may have had gender dysphoria and then had a sex change operation. And then after this, then that person no longer had gender dysphoria because the hormones in their body were being regulated properly. And then at that point in time, they're just trans. And then at that point in time, they often will regret getting the sex change surgery. So we have to isolate the gender dysphoria from the trans thing, because the two things are functionally different. You have to look at if you're going to have somebody, there's plenty of guys that if they were going to compete with women, that they'd probably get their butt whooped, right? And those guys should probably be able to play with the women, right? Maybe they'll like get some skills and they won't be so bad. But for the women, it's not fair that they don't get trophies first place as women, because the trans people always get first place because they're like they're utilizing steroids, chemicals. It's like the woman was taking steroids, essentially. It's like, okay, well, if the woman was taking steroids, well, then we would say that woman has been utilizing chemical substances that make that person give them a advantage. So if the trans person is taking chemicals to give them breasts so that they appear to be like a woman, but then that would be functionally the same thing as the woman taking steroids. So I would say I'm all in favor of these trans bans. I personally think that the schools shouldn't have anything to do with any sort of sex education. I've found with my son's like 11 and he's been doing homeschooling, and I found the propaganda that they push in the sex education class and everything around Black History Month has just been appalling. It's like they got an entire month dedicated to how bad white people are. Like every single day, you're like, you wake up and then the kid goes to school, they open it up and they're like, this is how bad white people are. They used to do this. They used to lynch black people. They used to put them in red-lined areas where they couldn't get loans for homes. And like these are just like little kids. And then they're like get into the sex education stuff, and they're like pushing all this trans stuff. They're teaching about microaggressions, like the oppressor class and the oppressed class, and then they demonize our founders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and it's like they do it because of the Civil Rights Act. I really think that the Civil Rights Act has been perverted. I'm not the only one that thinks this. It's done a lot of good, but like it's kind of it's like targeted directly towards white people, and it's like there's a lot of other people that are discriminated against for other reasons other than for race, sex, gender, such as beta males. Beta males are heavily discriminated against. They're actually a class of people. In fact, they have immutable characteristics. It's like they're a race of people. It's like, and then they get dumped on. They get like the people, like incels get hated on. It's because they're like, they had troubles with women and then they hated themselves, and then all these feminists on the internet just like hate on them, and like why are they like attacking these people? Let's think about that for a second. Why are all the feminists on the internet attacking the incels? They're preaching about equality, how you should treat people kindly, and then they're being horrible to this group of people. They're punching down. It's a punch down. Definitely not a punch up. The thing is that the women have dominant social status, and then the men are talking about, they're complaining about, so the women are like used to getting guys coming after them all the time. They're like, they never have to try to find a partner. In fact, it's kind of annoying. The guys don't leave them alone sometimes, but then they get addicted to the attention. And then there's a lot of women that don't get good quality guys. So there's 80% of women on Tinder will swipe right on top 15% of profiles on Tinder. And like they look for socioeconomic cues, like pictures, clues in your picture that indicate that you have status, such as tattoos, vacation pictures, pictures of you with other people in places that require a certain status of money in order to be there in that atmosphere. So the incels, like they don't, you know, maybe they might not have a good job, or maybe they're fugly. A lot of them aren't fugly. A lot of them are like good looking guys that just like hate themselves, and maybe not all of them are poor, but a lot of them are poor, and they're like, you know, they got money for a date, like they live at their mom's house, and then they start hating themselves, and then the women start hating on them, and because they say they hate them, and it's like the worst crime in the world nowadays is to like dislike an oppressed class of people. It's like, it's totally okay for them to attack an incel, destroy their name, harass them on the internet, plaster pictures up, talking about how bad they are to destroy the person's reputation. Like, this is totally cool. If it was a black person, then they'd be like, you're racist. If it's a black incel, they probably get away with it. If it's an Indian incel, I've never heard of any. Most incels are Indians, like from India, Indians, and you never hear about them talking about Indian incels ever. It's always a white incel. Like, why is it always a white incel? Well, the reason for this is because the young women, they don't have a work gap, but the feminists tell the young women that you're underpaid. And so they're young, and so they are underpaid. But not underpaid, but they're young and they're not making as much money as they would when they're older. And so the young women date older women, and then the guys, of course, well, they date younger women because the women their age can't have babies anymore. So if they want to have a baby and they want to have a family, well, most of the women that put off having a kid until their 30s, to when they're old, fat, got health problems, they're not an attractive choice for starting a family with. So they go for the younger women. So the older women, they have 2/3 of the money in the United States now. They hold about 2/3 of the college degrees, owning 91% of new homes, 2/3 of new cars, 89% of bank accounts. They get 93% of the food, which is great. A lot of it's for kids and other family members, which is wonderful. We definitely need to go on more vacations. So men, they tend to save more money. So like men work on average 50 minutes more than women per day. They tend to save their money. But the women, they actually like make our economy better by spending this money. Because like if the men just made stuff and they didn't actually like spend the money like around the time when they generated the money, you don't get a good return on it. So women actually like help us out by spending the money, and the guys want to actually spend the money on the women. But so the younger women, they think they're underpaid because they're dating older men, and the older men have money. That's why they're dating the older dudes. Because they got more money, and they're comparing the amount of money that they have to their boyfriend. They don't see how much money the other coworkers are getting. They just see how much money their boyfriend's getting. So they're like, I'm underpaid. I get so little money compared to you. And then they get older. They're like, oh, they put off having a kid until their 30s so they can rise up the man ladder, so they can have sex like men do, and so that they could give up on their kids, like just not have kids, so that they could get some money instead of dating a guy that has the money, which is what they do anyways. But the older women, they're pissed off because the young dudes, or the dudes that have been chasing them their entire lives and spending their money on them, now they're spending all their money on their younger women. They're not interested in them anymore. They're pissed off to high hell. So this is why they're attacking the incels, is because they're punching down. They're sexually frustrated. They're cat ladies. They're dog mamas. And heaven forbid, none of the two above. They're just crazy old lady. And so this causes them to be really delusional about stuff like trans, because they're like, oh, you can't oppress these trans people. And it's like, okay, so like trans people have historically been oppressed any more than like anybody else has. So like, okay, how exactly are homosexuals any more repressed than any other denomination of Christians? Like all these denominations of Christians have been like repressed at some point in time. Like the people used to kill Mormons, right? They used to have witch hunts. They used to like burn people alive at the stake because they thought you were a witch. Everybody's trying to point fingers at each other, saying it because the easiest way to not get accused of being a witch at a witch trial or in a witch hunt is to accuse other people of being a witch. Let's get back to this article. Why are they crazy about the trans thing? Because it's like this is oppression that's never occurred to them. They've never had this oppression. And so you get these people like the angry trans activists. And so the angry trans activists are these people that if you like misgender a trans person, or if you question whether or not it's okay to misgender trans people, they'll start flipping a wig on you. They're like, get really angry. And it's like, these people got anger management problems. It's like whenever there's authoritarian environments like workplaces or where there's like groupthink, people will get hopping mad if you break the social norms. So the social norms are like in our culture today are you don't be racist, you don't be sexist. It's completely fine to be extremely mean to white people. It's just not okay. And most black people aren't nice to other black people. Most Indians aren't nice to Indians. Most American Indians aren't nice to other American Indians. Most women aren't nice to other women. Most guys aren't nice to other guys. It's the way the world is. There's a lot of haters out there, and they all make you stronger. In fact, if you get enough haters, it's like pumping you up on steroids. You turn into Godzilla if you get enough haters out there. Like, yeah. Shit, say something offensive, Kale. Grab her by the pussy. But they're crazy about this trans stuff because it's new. And it's like people like gay people. And they created this thing called the Alphabet Mafia. And so what the Alphabet Mafia is it's like the people that get really upset at you if you like are quote unquote oppressing the LGBTQTP community. And the P stands for pedophile. So there's a lot of people who are like sexual deviants who are doing whack drugs, and they are like flamers, or they're like pansexuals. And like, I know a lot of these people from rave parties, dude. They like to get really fucked up. And like when you eat a bunch of acid at the rave, at the end of the night, like these people start to like show up, and like they're cool. They like got issues. They're way better at staying up than most of the other people, and they're generally good people. But the thing is they've been radicalized because they keep getting told that there's this like this straight white male heterosexual, or hold on, they're heteronormative people are like oppressing these trans people. And so these people think that the reason why they're not doing good in life is because it's like white males like me who are like up on YouTube, who are like saying stuff critical of their insanity, and they can't take it. They can't take any sort of criticism. They're like not mentally stable. And so they've normalized this victim mindset where they've said it enough to where it's internalized, where they believe this stuff sincerely. But the reality of the situation is that it's just a superior configuration to have a two-parent household. Most affluent people come from two-parent households, and it's the most superior configuration is where you have a mother who stays at home with the child full-time at first and then does part-time, where that mother had got some education beforehand, before she got pregnant. Like maybe she got a bachelor's degree, and then she passed that knowledge on to her children, and her children were able to get progressively more and more educated. And as this cycle occurs, these people get more and more dominant as it goes by. And this doesn't mean that they're bad people. It actually means that they're good people. Like when people go to date someone, they're looking for somebody like a good partner. They pick these people, right? They're not looking for the scrubby, weird, gender fluid, polyqueer with the rainbow hair. that's like half shaved and she's not wearing a bra, and maybe she's got like some jeans that look like they're like $10 Walmart jeans from 10 years ago or something. You know the kind that I'm talking about that makes their butt look pretty nerdy and like poor, but they somehow for some reason go for those shorts even though they have money. Don't ask me. It's like there's just something, I don't know. It's like, you grew up in the 80s, these people were everywhere, and then their clothing trends got popular. But in their victim mindset, they think that if other people are hating on you and talking shit about you, that this like doesn't make you stronger, that it like makes you weak and they can't take it. But the dudes who are tough and the chicks who are hot, they know that this is absolute complete bullshit, because people talk hella shit about people. Like, people are haters. Like, I can't tell you how much shit people have said about me in the past, back when I used to throw raves and I was like a rave drug dealer, like dosed tens of thousands of people, and sorry, I just had some flashbacks talking about that. So damn it, now all I can hear is psytrance. The victim mindset is, it's like they think that like if people are like don't give you the job on the first try, that it's like discrimination, or on the first interview that it's like systemic discrimination. And like the black people will be like, oh, I didn't get the job, that means this white dude was racist. And then, you look at the number of jobs that the white dudes had to apply for in order to get that job, and they had to apply for like twice as many jobs. They got turned down twice as many times. It's like they're just making up this stuff based on their worldview, based on some sort of circumstantial evidence. And then like they put the stuff up on the internet and then people like on it. And it's like, it's a mass delusion. There's no actual, like, people aren't actually trying to oppress gay people. Back a long time ago, they used to kill gay people, but like, that's definitely not going on. There's no like, but the reality of the world is like, most straight male dudes don't want to be like hanging out with like a bunch of whack liberals. That's just the reality of it. Most white males are conservative. Like 2/3 of them are at least 2/3 are conservative. Like, so, it's like when you go get a job, you got to get in where you fit in. Like, you can't just like smash together like a bunch of Antifa, like radical feminists with like a bunch of fat rolls that like wearing like got like some sort of like punk rock looking t-shirt and like some pink hair, or some chick who's like got the red hair, who's like wearing the business coat, who is always pushing the Democrat propaganda. Like, these people are like different culturally than you, and if they don't hire you for the job and they like want to be around people that are like them, that's actually totally cool. Like, there's nobody, it's not going to hurt you if these people go and hang out with themselves, and then you generate a network of people that you got your own resources, and then you people generate your own manufacturing connections and assembly lines and distribution networks, and then you gain that. It's like they like see what most of these heteronormative people who work really hard, get good grades, like what they do, and it's like they say that like in order to have that, they require you people to give them in order for them to have it. But this isn't the way the world works, actually. The way the world works is you can make it yourself. And they actually did that by building it themselves. And there was a lot of risks involved. And a lot of people went bankrupt doing it. And there were some people who were successful. And the vast majority of people, stuff that's created in our economy is created by 1% of the people. And everybody else is bitching about how they don't have as much as that 1% of people when they're perfectly able to make the stuff themselves. But then they're like, oh, somebody's talking shit about me. They misgendered me. I'm going to have to cry. I need a safe space. I can't have any of these Trump supporters around me because they said grab her by the pussy. Really, this is really the crux of the problem, is the whiny babies. It really is a bunch of whiny babies crying about how they don't need to clean up the spilled milk. That's really what it is. They're saying, no, I shouldn't have to do that because you're treating me like a minimum wage worker. I'm too good for that. And then meanwhile, they're like, take some 6 years to complete a community college degree and they run out of financial aid. Like, yo, bro, maybe you should go compare yourself to all these people that you're demonizing. Maybe you should go on a dating app and try to compare yourself side by side next to these people that you're demonizing and seeing whether or not you would even date yourself. I'm pretty sure that you would say you wouldn't. So maybe you shouldn't complain about all the other people who are doing it right. And that's the problem, is we live in a world where it's dominated by penises and vaginas. It's just the truth. Is things that aren't penises and vaginas are not going to be as superior as penises and vaginas. Because the reality of the world is every human came out of a vagina. There's just not a goddamn one, except for maybe some test tube babies. Right? But almost every single one of them popped out of a woman's vag. It's true. It's true. That means it's superior to pop out of a vag. It is. And these people who do eject little bundles of joy out of their genitalia, they have to put in a lot of money to raise these kids. Like, everybody ends up getting a lot of money invested into them as a kid. And then maybe like a lot of these liberals, like, they don't want to have kids, and then they don't have to spend the money on the kids, and then they complain about how they're oppressed when then you compare about how much they have compared to most of these parents, and the parents don't have jack shit. It's like they're complaining that they're oppressed when their entire lives everybody else has been wiping their ass, everybody paid for their stuff, and then when it's time for them to actually chip in and pay in, and then they don't want to. They want to give the money to the minority so that the Democrats can win. They want to rob Peter to pay Paul, to get Paul to vote for him. That's what they want to do. It's really what the scheme is: divert blame away from yourself, from your own biased hiring policies. Where are the biased hiring policies? Based on the GPA, here's the GPA chart. We've seen it a couple times tonight. It shows you the GPAs of the different races. You see at the bottom, there's the black circles. They're at the bottom. Most of them live in big cities. Here's the map from the 2016 election where the Democrats who voted for Hillary Clinton are. And then most Republicans live in big, medium to small size cities. These big bars are big cities where most Democrats live. And then your income is correlated to your GPA. You can see in this chart of the incomes. Blacks are at the bottoms. Hispanics, they had about $35,000 a year. Hispanics are about $40,000 a year. White people are about 58,000 a year. Asians about 70,000 a year. And it correlates directly to the GPAs. And where do most of these minorities live? Where do most of the Asians live? Living in these big cities. Here. So when they're pushing this pro-LGBTQP stuff, what they're trying to do is they're trying to shift blame away from themselves. They're trying to say, no, I'm the good guy. I'm fighting to help all these oppressed people out. It's the racist Republicans who are the bad people. It's not me that's the bad person. It's the racist Republicans because they say they're the ones that control the companies. But it's not true. It's actually the Democrats that control most of these companies. And they push this narrative because the people who work at these companies, they have like huge social networks because they got big money. They come from white privilege homes, and they have unfair amounts of influence on social media from being in big cities. And so they push these messages because people click like on their posts. And so they develop this worldview that the trans people are oppressed. And the reality is that like trans is so new that like nobody, like we used to call them cross-dressers my entire life. You would call them a cross-dresser. You say this dude's like a homosexual or something. But now they're like, oh, they're a different gender. It's like, okay. And then they crosses the line whenever they want to play in the women's sports, because it really is. It's like you're pushing politics here. It's like to let the trans quote unquote women into the sports with the women is like it's like saying you should let the men into the sports with the women. Well, that's it for that article. Let's see what do we got. All right. Let's read this article. You know that with the air conditioner on, it looks like the camera is not turning off, so it might be overheating. I don't know. I didn't think this camera would overheat with live streaming, but in this next article from Fox News, New York City teacher caught sucking topless man's nipples during Zoom class. A spicy slip of the tongue led to a Spanish teacher being yanked from her class after investigators found she performed an inappropriate sexual act during a Zoom session. I mean, you would think that these people would have figured out, I can get a privacy cover for my webcam. Instead, they're like, oh no, I can just turn it off, right? Right? And just start pulling out and just start wanking it. Like, right. No, dude. You got to get a website cover. You can actually sit there and jerk off. But you got to get a cover for your webcam, dude. I mean, for real, bro. Nobody's going to know if you just like spooged a load. But if you don't get that webcam, everybody's going to know. As students at the prestigious Columbia Secondary School for Math, Science, and Engineering remotely watched a quote-unquote live class, Amanda K. Fletcher, 37, quote, appeared to suck the nipple of an unidentified topless man, end quote, while, quote, gyrating, end quote, or, quote, rocking back and forth, end quote, according to the Special Commissioners of Investigations for City Schools. Before that, students watched Fletcher, quote, eating spaghetti, end quote, with the shirtless man behind her. The SCI says in a report dated October 29th, 2020, obtained by the Post. After taking her mouth off the man's chest, Fletcher said, quote, resumed teaching and discussing a worksheet, end quote, a student told probers. I'm trying to hide a smile right now. Like, inside my smile is one thing like... Investigators viewed several videos of the incident, which were shared by students on Snapchat and other social media platforms, the report says. The stunning scene took place on September 30th, 2 weeks after the City Department of Education opened the 2020 to 21 school year remotely. The alleged behavior started about 12 minutes before the class ended. While students were still present on the call, the report said Fletcher gave no explanation for her alleged conduct. She declined to be interviewed by SCI investigators, did not return messages for the Post. Quote, this behavior is absolutely unacceptable, DOE spokeswoman Danielle Filson said, yeah, like if you go over to Amazon, you know, there's like webcam covers. They cost like, you know, like here you can get 6 of them for like $7.30. I bet you can even find one for $1 if you look around. Like here you can get $3 for real. Here, this one even has cute little eyeballs on it. So next time you're going to wank it or suck on someone's nipples or bang yourself with a dildo in the middle of a Zoom class, especially when there's children present, please do yourself a favor and get a webcam cover and conceal the cover and turn the mic off. What else do we got going on here tonight? I think we have 2 more articles here, and then that's the end of the show for tonight. Unless there was another one down here. I think I might have missed another one. Debating if I want to do that. In this next article from the New York Post, Portland man recovering from beating after armed standoff amid protest. Portland police are trying to sort out exactly what happened that ended up sending Joseph Hall, 53, to the hospital. He was hospitalized from injury sustained when he was beaten by a crowd of demonstrators amid an armed standoff with the protest's self-appointed security. Portland police are trying to sort out exactly what happened Thursday afternoon that ended up sending Joseph Hall, 53, to the hospital. Hall told the Oregonian he strayed into the Justice for Patrick Kimmons March, held weekly to protest the 2018 shooting death of a 27-year-old black man. It was making its way down the street in North Portland neighborhood. He said he was headed home from a repair job at a nearby apartment complex when he swerved into the street to avoid a mob that cut him off. He then saw the mob followed him, a man screaming on a handheld radio to stop his red pickup truck. Soon another vehicle blocked his truck, and all of a sudden, they have 3 or 4 people around me with what looks like an AR-15, he told the paper. He claimed he was unaware of the march. He said he grabbed a non-lethal handgun that shoots hard pellets to try to get the people who are calling him a Nazi to clear out of his way, calling him a Nazi. I think they repeated that twice. There's a typo. This is definitely a typo. It says, who were calling him a Nazi to clear out of the way, calling him a Nazi. We got him. Quote, they're screaming and yelling at me, claiming I was out there trying to run people over. That's when I discovered a march was going on. And, quote, Hall told the paper, quote, I was trapped. A vehicle in front of me then trapped me. I couldn't go forward or around. In a video since removed from social media, the Oregonian reported that Hall could be seen standing outside of the driver's seat of his truck. Door opened with the gun outstretched in his hand, and the man in the street points a rifle at him. The video showed Hall confronting the demonstrators, one of whom pushed him down, and a melee ensued. Hall claimed he had the gun in his hand. Several others from his truck were stolen as he was tackled, punched and kicked. He'd been treated for a dislocated shoulder, broken clavicle, and 5 broken ribs. Do we have it? There was this. I don't know if they got anything going on here in the video. Got dude up in the hospital. It doesn't appear as if there's any video of the incident on this video. It's a shame. I'm tired of this stuff, dude. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and obviously I'm pretty vocal about the BS from the left. And so I'm a target, and I know at some point in time, similar situation is going to happen with me. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to go about dealing with it. It seems to be there, you need to get out of the way of these people immediately, even if it requires them on going up the windshield. There's several states have legalized that. It should be, don't go doing that. But if they're going to attack you and pull you out of their car and beat you, you got to get out of there as soon as possible, even if it requires doing something that you don't want to do. But, you end up turning out like this dude. Like they need to not do that. Like there's no justification. I remember I helped start the 26th Portland anti-Trump protest back when I was a radicalized liberal. I remember they were like mobbing around, shutting down the streets, and people were getting upset. And there was this dude, his mid-20s or something, really buck, and he was driving a motorcycle. He was doing donuts and trying to show off and like burning smoke from the wheels. And he had these motorcycle gloves on, and he would pull people out of their car, and he'd like smash them, like if they would like talk smack about getting of the mob blocking the traffic. It's like these people, like when they get into a mob, it's like they turn into dangerous. They turn into a threat to our country, a threat to your safety. Well, the problem is you can't stop. I don't know. They didn't show any videos, so I don't really know what happened. But there was another video from some California riot, and some guy stopped, and then like some people tried to pull him out, and then he had to. I'm not sure if he hit somebody or something. He was driving, and then some other people followed him in a car, chased him down. He thought he got away, and then the people caught up to him and then pinned him in, and then I think he got away or something. But it's like you can't trust these people. It's like you see them and you got to get the F away from them. It's the only thing that you can do. And we absolutely cannot be allowing these people to terrorize us, because once they start to learn they can get anything that they want by doing this, they're going to do it. If you think that this is the end of this, I got a bridge to sell you. Look, if you put $100 in my crypto wallet, you can have this bridge downtown. Seriously, $100, my crypto wallet. It's the thing. Once they figure out that they can get whatever they want by terrorizing us, then, well, that's exactly what they're going to do. It's not going to stop. We're going to need more anti-riot laws. We're going to need to take back these big cities. That's the problem with all this immigration, flooding in the immigrants into the mass migrants, illegal immigrants from Latin America into the big cities, is once these demographics of people have taken over, and then the Democrats have placated them to get their children to vote for them for long enough, it's like you can't like undo this. It's like they're like saying that like white people are oppressing the illegal immigrants, so we have to like protect the illegal immigrants who haven't illegally immigrated here because they've been oppressed by the white people, even though they don't live here. That's kind of the way it's going. That is, it is. It's like in authoritarian countries, whenever a dictator grabs power, it's like they're using some sort of justification to grab the power. They have to. So they oftentimes will do things to create the justification. Like they'll do false flag operations, or they'll frame people, or they'll rewrite history. And the problem is that they're rewriting our history. So our history has been rewritten from Americans were the shining city on the hill, where they treated people better than everybody else. They freed the slaves. They created democracy. They saved the world from the Nazis in World War II. I can't remember exactly what we did in World War I. That one was a nasty war too. But then this has all been rewritten into the white people are bad because they got this money given to them. They're capitalist. They didn't deserve the money. They're using it to oppress the proletariat. So the proletariat now needs to come and smash the bourgeoisie so they can return the power to the workers. Or is it, if you don't recognize that one's the communist propaganda line. I'm done with it. I'm sick of these people. What do we got? Hey, we made it through it. It's been 3 hours. I'm trying to do shorter sessions with fewer stories, but that was a long session. I have to say goodnight. It's been 3 hours. That was longer live stream than what I wanted. But thank you for tuning in to RSS commentary on, what was it, Saturday? Now it's Sunday, right? Right now it's Sunday, but that was Saturday, May 8th. And again, my name is Captain Cale McCullough. And until next time, farewell, sayonara, aloha, and peace be with you. Godspeed in your journeys.